What is the next brilliant thing?
The next brilliant thing. What we have next? We're going to have. Okay, we'll go with this. We're going to have the.
Oh, I like that. That bag's very nice.
Yeah, I don't know where it's from. The ancient Greek city of Tyrins.
Oh, okay. Right. I didn't know what you were going to pull out the bag then.
So anyway,
it's like Mr. Ben that used to do that. Just.
I couldn't bring the whole city in because it is a
city. Yeah.
It's a large city made of great big rocks, famous for its enormous walls, talked about by Homer in the Iliad, I believe. If I remember. So there's a little picture of it there.
It's just like it just goes into the back of it.
It's
I can't see Anne because of the sheen.
It's
decent, isn't it?
It's not one of the more the best known Greek sites.
It looks like the kind of place that you could have a really good stag do paintballing session at.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, it's interesting you should say that because
you get down the front, Frobber.
Right.
You still paintballing? Sorry,
I've got an injury.
Okay.
I've got a trigger finger injury.
Yeah.
Tyrins. So it's on the Peloponnese in Greece, and it was I guess reasonably powerful small city in 1,000 plus BC. But the reason I chose it is because I studied classics university, ancient Greece, and met my wife doing that. And I've been to this place 3 times. Once as a school kid on a school trip to Greece, which sort of changed my life because I wasn't really that into it, and then loved that trip.
How old were you then?
15. And then ended up studying it at university. Then
because of that trip.
Yeah. Just I realised quite why, because I went to sort of private schools when the days when sort of Latin and Greek was quite a thing you sort of had to do. Certainly Latin, and it's quite dry. So just a lot of language, and I think going to see Greece and seeing what made it so. It sort of put everything into context, and then it becomes, the literature starts to come alive, and you sort of understand quite how amazing that civilization was and its role in shaping the European world that we have today. Really, even sort of 2,500 years on. So
you had that at 15. You sort of like, but you weren't. It's kind of I love that, but you weren't like distracted by like girls. I don't mean that in like what were you thinking about birds? But it's something really amazing about the fact. I sort of think of myself at 15. I would be looking at that going, "Fuck, she's all right." Like,
and the walls are thick. Look at that ass.
No, I didn't say that. What I'm saying is, I was. I
clay figure from
But the point
still got it.
But the point I'm making, it's like. Were you always like a sensitive, deep kid? Like, because at 15 to kind of go on a school trip and go, oh my God, this is going to make the literature come alive, rather than fucking hell, Oggo shit himself. Like,
those two are not mutually exclusive, Russell.
Yeah, but I guess that's what's fascinating about you, that you are such a funny, likable guy, and yet I think of you as being very inward and deep.
Right.
Is that fair to say? But I
don't know about
being, were you
deep?
but at 15 to kind of go, oh my God, I went on this trip, and it's changed the way I look at this boring subject I've studied. It's fascinating.
And I don't know how to.
You can't take a compliment because you're British.
Yeah, that's right.
But I'm trying to say it's really interesting.
Yeah, but it was, and it is. They are completely fascinating times. You get these, city that, and they sort of feel alive because you got walls, the outlines of buildings, and you sort of feel like a connection that you do when you go to a sort of historic old place. So I went there when I was a kid. I went there with my wife when she was pregnant with our first child, 2006 that would have been, and then we took our kids there about 10 years off. So I've been to this place at 3, and there's no one's ever there. So a fairly low key site, and on the sort of tourist circuit of. I do remember when we took our kids there, and they would have been maybe 9 and 7 at the time, and they did say about sort of 4 days into our trip around Greece, can we not go and see rocks tomorrow?
Well, what you should do in the future, you do your thing, and then I'll give him 2 days with Uncle Russell.
Right.
Because there is a shit hot Aqualand there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I still owe you a trip to a water park.
You do, yes, that's right. Because I took you to the Yorkshire Sculpture Park.
You did.
And
yeah, it'd already been a tough day because we stopped off and had some chips at a service station, and I put sugar on my chips because they looked like salt.
Yeah.
And it was back in the days where I couldn't afford anything else. It was like fuck, so I'd have to have sweet chips. And then we went around the sculpture. And it was fine. It was interesting. It passed the day.
Yeah.
But then I said to you, you ever been to a water park?
Yeah.
Because they're great.
Yeah.
And you haven't still.
No, I've not been to. I don't know. I have been to a water park.
They're brilliant.
I want to go to a water park. Don't be bullied.
What does want mean? I mean, how do you define want, Dan? I mean,
have you ever been on a trampoline?
No, not a proper trampoline. No.
What a great
I mean, like
answer.
the little ones that we,
the little ones in the gym where you do your little sessions. Yeah,
but not like a proper competition trampoline.
But, okay, all right, it's a wet.
But I respect physics, Russell.
Ever jumped from a wall?
Well, what type of wall are we talking about here?
Well, like a 4-foot wall, let's say, and felt.
I've jumped off the odd wall.
Yeah, and felt that rush. Well, imagine
A rush from jumping off a 4-foot wall.
Well, if it was a 300-foot wall, and
Yeah,
you were
that's different, though, isn't it?
and you were
That's an
gonna land
entirely different form
in
of rush.
safe water.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't think any water is safe from 300 foot up.
it depends how it's built.
All right.
If you kind of swoosh down like that, you're going to be all right.
Okay. Right.
I don't know how they do it. All I know is, I'd like to take you there.
Okay.
I'm intrigued because I've never been to one either.
Yeah.
And I hear all this shit all the time.
Yeah.
But he clearly connects with it in a profound way.
Yeah.
And I think it's unfair of us as virgins
Yeah.
to cast too much opinion without actually experiencing.
Yeah. No, I'm open-minded about the water park. Yeah.
Water park curious.
Yes. Yeah. I guess so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But also, I mean, when it comes to the ancient Greeks, Russell, I mean, you look at some of their vases. I mean, there's pretty much nothing that is on the internet today that the ancient Greeks weren't putting on a vase. They were absolute filth monsters.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Absolute.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's it's kind of, and all the, I guess you could sort of lay a claim for sketch comedy coming out of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like as in like there was lots of kind of sort of puppets and lots of phalluses going on, and it was all.
Yeah.
But it was public plays about the things that had happened. That's
Yeah. So I as part of my degree, I was not an assiduous student, but I did study ancient Greek comedy, and it is absolutely fascinating. So these plays were written in sort of 400 odd BC by Aristophanes, and they were sort of total comedy. Talk about the Dutch doing total football.
Yeah.
So
it's Gegengest.
Aristophanes' comedy ranges from, sort of political satire, and he's writing in a time when Athens was involved in a very long war with Sparta.
What's that all about?
Yeah, exactly. That's which you don't get too much comedy about these days. There was a lot of literary parody. There were puns, word plays, dick jokes, slapstick. Pretty much every possible form of comedy.
Was it still funny?
Yeah, well, yeah. So I was like, before I studied it, I went on a school trip to see a play, and it was a really funny production. They really sort of brought it alive and brought out the physical element, the slapstick of it, updated it. At the Shaw Theatre in London, and so because the text can seem quite dry and inaccessible, and obviously the reference points are different. But I think having seen how it could be funny, then it did definitely change the way that I looked at the text. Also, on that trip in 2006, there was a production of Aristophanes' Frogs, which is one of his best-known plays, in Athens, in the ancient Roman theatre on the side of the Acropolis.
Oh my God!
Which they still use, and so the original theatre, it would have been performed in I think it was sort of 405 BC, is a few hundred yards. So it's almost in the same place it was first written. It was performed in modern Greek, and there were maybe 2,500-3,000 people there in this great big Roman theatre, and my wife and I both studied at university, and we happened to have a translation with us for. Because I was doing a radio show about one of Natalie Haynes' radio shows when I got back, and I had to brush up on it. So anyway, by a lucky coincidence, we could follow it along, and also we were quite familiar with it from 10 years before at university, and it was really amazing. It's one of my favourite experiences of watching comedy, seeing these jokes from almost 2,500 years ago making a modern audience laugh.
Wow.
A few hundred yards away from where they would have first had laughter.
In that sense.
Yeah. And, and the fact that, there are these, obviously, some of it is, tastes change, but fundamentally people will laugh at the same things. People laugh at farts and sex and politics and wordplay in the same way that they did 2,500 years ago, and presumably 2,500 years before that, in whatever form people were doing it then. So that was, that was genuinely one of my top 3 comedy watching experiences, I would say.
What were the other 2?
Well, obviously, the first time I saw you do a gig, Russell, that's right.
Sense.
Yeah.
When was that? I believe that was at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Was it?
It was
1999.
1999.
We did that. Was that the first time we met? The new act.
So You Think You're Funny?
So You Think You're Funny
final.
was the final. Highlights of that. First time with Jimmy Carr was also in that.
Yeah.
First time I met Jimmy said, "My God, I bet you've been on a lot of camping holidays," which made me laugh, and he was bang on.
Yeah.
The other memory I have of that is you were on first.
Yes.
I was on third. Josie Long was on second.
Yeah.
She won.
Josie won.
Okay. No, David O'Doherty.
David
won.
O'Doherty
Josie
won.
was second.
Yeah, Josie was second, and Juliet Cameron was third.
Yeah.
I was on third. So Andy had done his 7 minutes, then Josie did her 7, and I did my 7. That means I was away from Andy for 14 minutes. When I came back, Andy was shit-faced. And it was like, I was like, that is extraordinary. And someone who's met him, I was like, he was clearly leathered because it was like free beers and whatnot.
In mitigation, or explanation, it was quite tense. We were all new in comedy, and you couldn't hear from backstage, couldn't hear anything.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even worth listening to everyone else.
No, that is true. It is true, but it's and also I'd had a rough night because I was staying with Richard Morris, who was also in it, and I didn't expect to get into the final, so I hadn't booked a hotel, and I got into the final from the semi, and he said, "Oh, you can stay at my friend's house if you want." And there were no covers on the bed, and I was very cold, so I took the curtains down and kind of slept in the curtains and slept in. I meant to wake up early and put the curtains back up, and he came in and it looked like I'd fucking ripped him off, but I hadn't. I'd sort of unhooked them. I was so cold. It was like August, no heat, and so I had to walk around Edinburgh all day.